Patriots Catch-22 podcast with Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
I'm Evan Lazar. Evan Lazar.
Hello, everybody.
Nailed it. Joined as always by our Barth. That's a fit. That's a match.
No risk it, no biscuit.
22.
Here is Evan Lazar and Alex Barth.
What's your dumb number one?
So I'll go 5-1. Safety, corner, wide receiver, tackle. Number one is punter. Because, no, I'm kidding. You're about to shut my mic off. You're about to shut my mic off.
Walked out.
No.
I was like, how can we mute him right now? Are you sure it's not punter?
Not yet.
Not yet. Not
Still
yet.
time. Still a
Not
lot of
yet.
Off-season left.
Well, we're not going to talk about punters today because we got some big Patriots news to talk about, and I'm going to call this an emergency podcast. This was not necessarily planned ahead of time, but the news yesterday breaking that Bill O'Brien is back as the Patriots offensive coordinator. He's been in the building. That's just what I've heard and what we've been told.
What the Shrine Bulls told us.
That he's in the building. He's been in the building since Monday, and Bill O'Brien is back in New England. Evan Lazar, Alex Barth, Patriots Catch-22, coming to you on a Wednesday. It's also weird. We don't usually do Wednesday.
Just last week, we gave that whole spiel about, hey, we're in this time slot now.
Thursday.
This is what it's going to be.
Yeah, and then, of course, tomorrow, along with Bill O'Brien, as it turns out, thank you, Shrine Bowl. I was wondering if he was going to make the trip with us. Alex and I will be making the trip to Las Vegas for the Shrine Bowl, and I am really fascinated to see the prospects out there. We're gonna do a little Shrine Bowl preview at the end after we're done talking about Billy O. But I'm also really fascinated. I think more so maybe at this point in the prospects, just because we're so early in the draft circuit, is the dynamics of the coaching staff, how this all works out. So Bill Belichick, Gerard Mayo, and Bill O'Brien are in these supervisor roles, these overseer roles. The actual coaching is going to be done by the assistants. Troy Brown is the head coach of the West team at the Shrine Bowl that the Patriots are representing. Ross Douglas, hot coaching name right now, honestly, a guy that's rising through the ranks here in New England. He's going to be the offensive coordinator. He's going to coach quarterbacks. And then Mike Pellegrino and Brian Belichick, the secondary coaches, if you will, the safeties and cornerback coaches for the Patriots, are going to split the defense and be co-defensive coordinators. But as much as that's cool, and I'm glad for those guys that they get some exposure and get their name out there, I think what's really going to be very interesting to me is, can we see, and I hope we will be able to see, how much evaluation Bill O'Brien and Gerard Mayo are doing alongside Bill Belichick, Matt Rowe in the front office. Like, is Bill O'Brien going to have Bill Belichick's ear when it comes to talent evaluation? I look at these guys that, I'm sure you're going to do a prospects preview of 10 guys to watch at the Shrine Bowl.
Already did, and it's like 20-something.
It's probably 500 people.
98.5thesports.com.
No,
it's
like
like
5,000 words.
It's like 15.
It's a Bible. I get it.
Hey, man, covering the draft is a numbers game.
It is. You just got to cast a wide net and hope that you hit, especially with this team. But maybe they get to the Shrine Bowl, and I know everybody's darling around here is Zay Flowers. The Patriots will coach Zay Flowers at the Shrine Bowl. And one of the big things that
Specifically, Vinny Sunseri, right, is the wide receivers coach?
Yeah, Vinny's the wide receivers coach. Obviously, Troy Brown will be there as the head coach. Ross Douglas will be there as the coordinator who coached wide receivers as an assistant to Troy Brown last year. So all hands on deck in terms of offensive evaluation, offensive minds for the Patriots, besides Nick Caley, which we can get to here in a little bit as well. But as we get into Bill O'Brien and the hire, I think the two bigger picture takeaways that I came away from this with is, the biggest one I think is probably that we're finally going to get, remember a month ago when we went on that whole rant about how you can't evaluate Mac Jones in this offense because it's such a mess. We're finally going to get a functional, professional NFL offense for Mac Jones, similar to his rookie year, but now he's not a rookie anymore.
Right.
And we're going to get to see him in this environment and, in my opinion, actually make an evaluation of what they have at quarterback. Is this always going to be a guy that you can pull to a victory and pull to a playoff appearance, but not necessarily going to pull you along the way? Or is this someone that can elevate his game and get to that next level? And we see on the TV behind you, Joe Burrow, like somebody like that can really get to that type of quarterback. And I think the Patriots still have a lot of work to do personnel-wise, which we'll talk about ad nauseum for the next 6 months or whatever it is. But in general, from a sophistication standpoint, just an overall logistical cleanliness execution standpoint,
Yeah.
He should have enough now with Billy back in the building to be a functional NFL quarterback again, like he was in his rookie season. So now we got to see it from Mac. I do think there's some pressure that this puts on Mac Jones to perform now. You don't have the excuse of having Matt Patricia and Joe Judge running the offense anymore. You have a real offensive coordinator with real chops on that side of the ball coaching you now. Let's see what he's got. I'm excited. I'm excited to see if Billy can get Mac Jones to that next level. Is there another level for him to hit? And is O'Brien the guy that gets it out of him?
And even if Mac can't get there, now the next guy's coming into a functional system. Right?
And you get that answer. I think
you get that answer.
You have to have that answer.
Either Mac Jones gets rolling, or if not, the next guy comes in with a real offensive coordinator and a guy who's worked with quarterbacks, young quarterbacks at a high level before. Did it with Deshaun Watson in Houston, got him rolling, obviously, early in his career. So, yeah, he was the right guy for the job, period.
Yeah.
And the quarterback element of it is a big reason why that's the case.
Yeah,
right?
I look at all the quarterbacks, really, that O'Brien, and I understand that people don't necessarily want to throw Brady because he's Brady and he was going to be good with anybody, and especially with the weapons that O'Brien was coaching him with, Gronk and Hernandez and Welker, and I mean, they were loaded on offense. With that being,
did he overlap with Moss?
I think Moss's last year, 2009, would have been Billy O'Brien's first year.
Well, I think he was the wide receivers coach in 2008.
It might have been. We have to look that up. But, yeah, I think he was around for sure. He's there from 2007 to 2011.
He was the wide receivers coach in 2008, offensive assistant in 2007.
Right, so he was definitely here with Moss.
Yeah.
I think that you just look at some of the things stylistically that I really like watching his Alabama film. I also went back and there's some really good, I posted one of them on Twitter. There's some really good coaching clinics out there of Bill O'Brien breaking down some of his core concepts and some of his, or staple plays, whatever you want to talk about. I think people forget the differences between Josh McDaniels and Bill O'Brien, because although I think that fundamentally they believe in a lot of the same things, I think that there's a lot of schematic differences on how they get there. And O'Brien is not necessarily known for being a heavy under center coach. Like, they're not going to put Mac Jones under center 50% of the time with O'Brien back. I'm not saying they'll never put him under center, but that's not the under center with the power eye with, Jakob Johnson or James Devlin in the back. Like, that's Josh McDaniels' offense.
Right.
This offense is much more spread, gun, tempo, quick strike, get the football out of the quarterback's hands, hunt matchups, that type of thing. And I think on the one hand, I'm really excited for Mac Jones for that to be the case, because the big thing is they're going to get back to an offense with O'Brien where the most important thing is the middle of the field. And I felt like last year, especially with the way that they designed the vertical elements of their offense under Matt Patricia, too much of their offense was either targeting the deep part of the field or targeting outside the numbers.
Right.
And they're putting Mac in the gun, they're running verticals, and they're just asking him to hunt a matchup, make a throw down the field, handle pressure, just kind of figure it out. Right? I mean, a lot of the times they're just kind of having him sit there in the pocket, and there's a lot of talking about how do they block things with their protection scheme and their system and changing in the protection scheme. There was just a lot of instances where it felt like Mac Jones was being asked to create something, make something happen out of the shotgun, when in reality, the quarterbacks that do that at a high level, Mahomes, Allen, Herbert, they're a different skill set, right? Like, that's
right.
A different type of quarterback than what you have. So I think the great thing about what O'Brien likes to do is that his spread is more about the middle of the field. It's more about a quick, short and intermediate passing game than it is about a deep passing game. And most importantly, I'd say, baby, as well, they're just going to get back to Mac's mind being a big thing for him. Not
the biggest thing.
Not asking him to physically be Josh Allen or Joe Burrow or one of these freak quarterbacks, but allowing him to win between the ears. Where this is the matchup, this is the coverage shell, this is where I'm going, this is where my eyes should be. Get the ball out and let the playmakers do their jobs. That, I think, is really a great thing for the Patriots from a stylistic perspective that I thought this year, or last year, I guess now, they got away from a little bit too much.
Well, you talk about the short and intermediate, and I wrote about this on 985thesportshub.com this morning, and Evan, it's something we've talked about at length on this show. Last year, they were third in the league in explosive plays, but their yards per play on those non-explosive plays ranked 27th, and it was 29th going into that Bills game. They need to be better. It can't just be boom or bust because the boom's not big enough. So what they need to do, just to improving on last year, is either the small plays need to be more consistent or the big plays need to be bigger. And making the big plays bigger is an impossible task. That's basically what the Bills tried to do against Cincinnati.
Right.
When the big plays weren't hitting, they were like, we're going to try bigger, and they couldn't do it. They need to be able to move the ball. Like last year, they were either picking up 30 yards or nothing. They need to be able to move the ball 5 yards at a time, 6 yards at a time. Mac Jones, coming out of college in his rookie year, he is at his most dangerous when he is throwing to that intermediate part of the field. Between the numbers, outside, to the sidelines, whatever. He is at his best when he's throwing to the intermediate part of the field. That was not a part of their offense this year, really at all. They need to go back to attacking that intermediate part of the field because when you do that, it opens up the run game because teams can't come up on the line of scrimmage. And it also maybe opens up some deep shots later in the game because you basically force teams to pack the middle. So they can't put as many assets up front. They can't put as many assets deep. And then you can really start to sort of toy with them. That was the Brady offense.
Yeah.
Was attack the intermediate until they take it away, and then you just have your pick. They need to get back. I know you said short and intermediate, and the short game is a part of it. But for me, it's they have good intermediate receivers. Kendrick Bourne, Hunter Henry, Jacoby if he comes back. Jacoby's probably their best intermediate receiver, but he's a free agent. They have a quarterback who loves throwing to the intermediate. They now have an OC who is excellent in the intermediate, that 8 to 12-yard range. That is where they should have been living last year. That is where they're going to need to live this year, and I think O'Brien's a guy that's going to make that happen.
Yeah, if you look at the 2011 Patriots offense, which I think is the blueprint here originally.
Sure.
Now we're going to get into two, which I think is what makes this higher, puts it over the top for me, and why I've always been number one, Bill O'Brien, is O'Brien over the last couple of years, but specifically obviously in Bama, has taken the 2011 Patriots offense and he's now modernized it to the college game today, right? So now you have the 2011 Patriots with an early down RPO package, essentially, right? It's more complicated than that, but just simple terms. That's what he has developed at Alabama over the last 2 years, which I think is just such a great fit for not only the quarterback, but I would also mention some of the players that they currently have on the roster. Like now all of a sudden, when I'm looking at some of these plays that he ran at Bama last year, a guy like Jonnu Smith is sort of a plus piece.
There's a spot for him. You can see how they're going to use him.
They had that fullback / tight end. I had his name, 45 on Alabama.
Oh, he's an underclassman. Yeah, not Cameron Latu, who we'll get to.
Cameron Latu is Hunter Henry. Right?
Hunter Henry, yeah.
Right. And so they had these two tight ends. One of them was more of like a fullback, H-back type of tight end, and one of them was Latu, who's like more of an inline Y tight end. And they both had really good tape at Bama because of Bill O'Brien. Now, the fullback was more blocking, obviously, and doing different things like that. But in general,
Robbie Oots.
So the point is that you see how the two tight ends can be.
Well, so hang on. Let me, because I saw some people in the chat were wondering if we look at it during the show. I do.
Yeah.
Is the fullback coming back with this, or is it going to be that hybrid Jonnu Smith?
I think it's a hybrid role. And I think that you look at the guy at Alabama,
Oots.
You look at the way that they.
By the way, he's not draft eligible this year. I'll just throw that out there.
Yeah.
Latu is. He's not.
They look at some of the way that they would package together the tight ends in Houston, and then obviously go back to 2010, 2011 with the Patriots. It's more of like a versatile fullback role.
Yeah.
It's kind of like Kyle Juszczyk.
I was about to say it's that Juszczyk role, or slightly different, but Ricard in Baltimore.
Ricard, kind of lines up off the line, but in line.
It's more under center, but
I think that there's going to be some different things there that they can do with the tight ends. But just to wrap it up on Mac and why where we're going here in terms of the offensive system and things like that, O'Brien loves empty. He loves to empty the backfield and go 5 wide. That's a big part of his offense. But
so in that sense, like, I think Pierre Strong is a guy who could really be involved.
Yeah.
Obviously, we know Ramondre can catch the ball. Maybe in the draft, and we don't have to go there right now because it's going to be a whole thing. But he had a certain running back that knows how to catch the ball.
Stop it.
But
You've already annoyed me enough.
Pass catching running backs back.
Okay, so
we are getting into that at some point.
A lot of what O'Brien does out of empty, which I think is so successful for him, is he has answers for every type of coverage and just allows the quarterback to read it out, right? So if you take the running back, if Ramondre Stevenson's out wide and empty and they match it with a linebacker, well, then it's probably man-to-man coverage. If the corner stays out there, it's probably zone. Now you kind of get that coverage indicator. Then you get into the middle of the field, and he has middle of the field open, middle of the field closed, split safety, post safety. He has options there for the quarterback. And one of the best routes that he really just spammed at nauseum, obviously with Wes Welker and also Hernandez to a degree as well, is that juke series from the number 3 spot. And when they got those split safety coverages, they know that they're going to get Welker isolated on the middle linebacker, on the Mike linebacker in those types of structures. And Brady would they would just dice him up with that, right? I mean, it was just crazy. So that's where I think when we talk about personnel that I think there's a couple of other things that I mentioned about O'Brien, I'm sure you as well. But when we get into personnel, I think the one thing that's really standing out to me of if we're really going to make the Billy O'Brien offense work for the Patriots, it's that slot receiver, right?
Yeah.
And he talked about it in one of the videos that he did that I was mentioning earlier on the coaching clinic. The number 3 spot in Haas juke, right? The juke route, the option route in the middle, Edelman, Welker.
I think they ran that with James White a couple of times too, didn't they?
I'm sure. They ran a lot of it, so they would run Haas on the outside, and then James White run the option route out of the backfield.
Out of the backfield, yeah.
Instead of true empty. But regardless, he mentioned multiple times that your quickest player has to be in that spot.
Yeah.
And he's mentioned quick, not fast.
So are we doing this? Are we doing...
I'm not doing it fully. I don't want to...
I feel like I do this spiel too much.
He mentioned quick, not fast.
Let's just... Okay. If you don't know...
Tyquan Thornton is fast.
In football terms, fast is straight line speed. It's Tyquan Thornton. He's very fast.
Right.
Quick is...
Julian Edelman.
Change how much you can change direction,
right.
Like how quickly you can change direction, how quick you get in and out of those cuts, accelerating in and out of those cuts, operating in a phone booth, how well you can move in a short space. That's quickness.
Right.
That's not some guys are fast, not quick. Some guys are quick, not fast. I mean, it's a no example. Like Tyreek Hill would be a guy who's both, right?
Right.
Quick and fast. There aren't a ton of guys who are both quick and fast.
Right. So a lot of his offense, not just the juke series, but he loves to run bunches, motion into bunch, and then run that 3-man bunch route. A lot of those routes, though, are just about attacking leverage and finding matchups, right, all over the field. And that quick jitterbug receiver that gets open. I mean, a guy in 2021 who's not even really an NFL player, Slade Bolden, put up numbers at Alabama.
It'd be nice to Slade Bolden.
But you know what my point is? That guy, that type of guy can really thrive.
Quick, not fast.
If I could go down the hall right now and be a fly on the wall to these conversations that Bill Belichick and Bill O'Brien are having about the offensive personnel, which I'm sure are going on, I'm fascinated to see what O'Brien thinks of Jacoby Myers.
Okay.
And does O'Brien believe that Jacoby Myers can be his Wes Welker now, right? Does he believe that Jacoby is that type of guy? Jacoby's quick. I don't think he's as quick as those guys were, and I don't think he gets open off the line of scrimmage as quickly as those guys did. The point that I'm to connect it all, honestly, is a guy like Zay Flowers at the Shrine Bowl this week that they're going to get a first-hand look at on their team at the Shrine Bowl, played down the street at Boston College. He's a guy that's a jitterbug, right? Like he's a quick guy that can get open in a short, tight space, and really, like, he would be great for that role.
Right.
Does O'Brien go to the Shrine Bowl with the Patriots this weekend and fall in love with Zay Flowers and be like, that's the type of guy that I need to make this offense go? Or is it Jackson Smith and Jigba? Or is it any of the other, Josh Downs?
How about Tank Dell?
Tank Dell. Like, name any of the million of them that are in the draft.
It's a great draft for that kind of player.
I'm getting
great
to the point with this, especially with this hire, where it kind of feels like paying Jacoby Myers $13, $14 million to sort of be that guy, but maybe not be what they really need that guy to do. It might not be the best course of action, and we haven't even gotten into the yards after catch element of it as well,
right,
where a guy like Zay Flowers can turn a 5-yard juke route into a 11, 12, 13, 14-yard gain like Edelman and Welker used to do. So that's going to be important, I think, for this offense, is that Bill O'Brien's offense is at its best when they're attacking the middle of the field. The quarterback is at its best when he's attacking the middle of the field. They got to I think they need to make sure that they have that spot figured out.
A middle of the field receiver.
A middle of the field receiver. I don't think with his offense, and you look at that 2011 Patriots offense, I mean, who was on the outside? Like, was it Brandon Lloyd? No, I don't.
They lined up Gronk a lot on the boundary that year,
yeah,
didn't they?
but like, the actual receivers that were supposed to be, I think they brought Deion Branch back, right? He had a second stint with the Patriots. I don't know if that was 2012 or 2011.
Yeah, it was Branch. So the final roster receivers were Branch, Edelman, Wes Welker, Chad Ochocinco, Matthew Slater.
So
they had somebody else earlier in the year who got hurt. I'm trying to find it, but
they traded Moss and went in 2011.
No, didn't they trade him in 2010?
No, they went to the 2010 playoffs and lost to the Jets in the divisional round with Moss on the team.
Okay, so it was Randy Moss and then Deion Branch.
That team did not care about the outside receiver. Now, when he went to Houston, he had DeAndre Hopkins, and he cared a little bit more. I'm not saying he can't build the offense through the outside receiver, but I'm just wondering if that's what's best for the quarterback, and maybe getting back to that middle of the field offense is really what's best for everyone, and you already have the 2 tight ends in-house to get some of that stuff going.
So a couple things. Moss was off the team in 2010. It was Branch on the outside, and they ran Tyquan Underwood out there at the end of the year. And he only had 3 catches that year. He's pretty much just a decoy. Let me bring up this name then, because you're talking about the draft for that role. But, all right, so your best receiver needs to be in the slot, but you want a guy who you can put outside when you need to. Evan, you're describing Jerry Jeudy.
Yeah, he is a good fit too.
Like that, to me, so this all tells me that Jerry Jeudy is like, if they're going to go out and get the veteran.
Yeah.
We're not talking Hopkins anymore. Like, Jeudy is the guy.
Yeah.
Is kind of what it sounds like you're saying. And I wouldn't disagree.
I'm fine with that. But, yeah, those are the couple of things that
All right, well, let me ask you this then.
Okay.
2nd-round pick.
Yeah.
Draft Zay Flowers or trade it for Jerry Jeudy?
I'd probably trade it for Jerry Jeudy.
I'm with you.
I would.
I'm with you. Go get the guy who's proven he can do it.
I don't know if that's enough. If Jerry Jeudy is truly on the open market and he becomes available, do they trade him for the 45th pick in the draft? I don't know.
Okay, and call it and something,
Yeah,
but
I think there is a big and something.
A.J. Brown went for what? Like the 20th, 19th, 20th pick?
18th pick, something like that.
All right, so Jerry Judy's not A.J. Brown.
Right.
Do you call it? And it was just a first, nothing else.
Yeah.
Does like a second and a future third, a second, and they do have 2 thirds, actually. They could do a second and a third.
What's also fascinating, not to get down the Jerry Jeudy rabbit hole.
No, I want to do this.
What's also fascinating is that it's essentially the same trade that they made for Brandon Cooks, right? Because Brandon Cooks had that 5th-year option.
Right. Yeah, you're right.
And they traded for him in year 4, and then they traded him on the 5th-year option for the 23rd overall pick, which was eventually Isaiah Wynn. But it's 2 years of team control if you trade for Jerry Jeudy this offseason, assuming that 5th-year option gets picked up, which I assume it would. So that is the Brandon Cooks trade. Now, they traded their 1st-round pick for Brandon Cooks.
I don't think they need to give up the 1st-round pick to get maybe the Broncos don't have a first. I was going to say maybe trade down in the first, like swap firsts. That's the other thing. The Broncos are desperate for picks.
Yeah.
So they might take a 2nd and a 3rd over like a late first because they, at a certain point, they need players.
Yeah.
So
they need a lot.
And look, he put up 1,000 yards and 1,000. I'm rounding up. It was like 980 something. He put up 1,000 yards in that offense last year. I know people have said, well, he's not as proven as a guy like Hopkins or a guy like Mike Evans.
But he's younger.
He has room to grow, and he's proven enough. I look at what he did last season. It was impressive.
At this point.
Yeah, I'm kind of over that one.
Something against DeAndre Hopkins. I just don't really have much interest in a 31-year-old receiver.
Yeah, and I don't know about the relationship between him and O'Brien at this point.
That's you know me. I don't really care about that kind of stuff. But more so than anything, I want to see them get that 25, 26-year-old hitting the second contract receiver.
Well, more so than Judy came out young. Jerry Judy's I think 23.
That's more ideal to me.
Jerry Jeudy will be will turn 24 during OTAs next year.
All right, so that I think is a decent breakdown of the staples of the O'Brien offense, right? Going back a decade, right? That he is, Haas juke, like that's his offense, right? Bunches, switch releases, like all those different types of things to attack the middle of the field. Tight ends, right? Nub formations, 2 tight end sets, like that's what he does. The other element of this, which we talked about a lot when we talked about candidates and why we liked Bill O'Brien so much for this job, is the Alabama angle. And looking at what Alabama did over the last 2 years, really modernizing the old Patriots Bill O'Brien offense. And I don't want to call it the old Patriots offense because I still think that Bill O'Brien's, was it 3 years as the actual OC, right? Because McDaniels left in 08. I still think that those 3 years were a little bit different than the McDaniels years.
Well,
I do.
Here's what's important to remember. Bill O'Brien didn't run his offense at Alabama. When they hired him to replace Steve Sarkisian in the spring of 2021, the idea from Saban was you're going to run this offense we've been running with Sark, and that's where Mac Jones comes in. Yeah. Mac Jones is the one who taught it to him that spring while he was getting ready for the draft.
I think it's even based off of what I saw on film.
Yeah,
I think Bill O'Brien put his spin on it.
Of course he did.
More than maybe that.
But the question is how much of what they were doing are truly things, and this isn't like a knock. This is a legitimate question that we're going to find out.
Yeah.
How much of what they were doing does O'Brien truly believe in and wants to bring with him? And how much was he running because Saban wanted him to run it?
Yeah, that's a fair question. I think from a passing game standpoint, like take the RPOs and all that stuff out of it and just think about traditional drop back pass from the gun. That was all O'Brien. Like that was all the O'Brien offense. Sarkisian's offense from the gun was much more air raid, throw the football down the field because they had those receivers, right? They had, Waddle and Devontae Smith and Mechie. Like, so they were, Mac was airing it out at Alabama in 2020. If you watch that film, he's throwing deep balls left and right at Alabama in 2020.
But his arm sucks, Evan.
So that's a different, I think when they ran, especially last year with Bryce Young, was much more like Bill O'Brien centric. Now, the Alabama-fying or Alabama-fication, whatever you want to call it.
I want to call it Alabama-fication.
Okay, Alabama-fication of the Patriots offense. What I'm really hoping and expecting is that early down RPO package that they dipped their toe in last year, but let's face it, it was horrible. It was horrible.
You're talking about they here?
Here.
Yeah.
Patriots. They will now get the PhD version of the RPO package that Bill O'Brien can bring from Alabama, which is maybe one of the best RPO packages at any level of football.
You had the number. You texted me this. They didn't run like the number of like truly designed runs without a pass option attached was like very low last year.
At Alabama?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to get to the run game because I think that's an important part of this. That's,
of course.
To me, the run game is the big unknown right now with Bill O'Brien. But
maybe that's where Adrian Clem comes in.
I get to that in a second. The RPO package on early downs, I think, is going to go from basically inside zone bubble, right, where you run an inside zone in the middle of the field and the bubble screen attached to it on the outside. Now you get RPOs with slants. Now you get RPOs with motion, right? Guys coming in motion and running off those actions. Now you get seams from the tight ends off RPO. Where
did you say slants?
Yes.
Okay.
Slants is the biggest one.
That's my favorite RPO personally. So I want to see.
Well, that one that's Alabama's staple, right? Especially.
Wonder why it's my favorite.
I would say the X slant, right? The backside slant.
Yeah.
So because you run these inside zone, or even if you want to run a gap scheme, the linebackers have to come up and press up, right?
Right.
And when they press up, you just hit the slant
right behind him.
right by his ear hole. Right. So those are the types of plays that Alabama is known for and that they could bring here that Mac thrived with in 2020 in their RPO package. I love the way that they motion guys at Alabama as well. They ran a ton of motion screens where the receiver kind of comes in motion first and then you throw it to him while he's running, while he's already on the move. And that allows him to build up that momentum so much. So instead of throwing the ball out on a screen to a stationary wide receiver, now you're having the receiver roll into it, right? Where he's got a head of steam as he's coming up the field. So those are the types of things I think they'll pull from Alabama and be able to run here. And last year their RPO package was statistically terrible, talking about the Patriots.
Yeah.
They were negative EPA off RPO. They were negative air yards per attempt off RPO because all they were throwing were screens, right? So that RPO package that they ran last year, to put it politely, was rudimentary. Like, it was basic as it comes when it comes to that type of thing. So I think Bill O'Brien will be able to bring that to the 21st century, if you will, and modernize it to the point where it's actually going to be an effective tool for the Patriots. So you'll have a little bit of that 2011 Patriot offense will probably be 90% of what they're about to do next year, and then the other 10% will be stealing some of this stuff from Alabama.
So, all right, I know you don't want to do this, but I'm going to bring it up.
Oh, boy.
A lot of those concepts you're talking about were geared around the running back. Like, Jahmyr Gibbs led the team in catches. He led the team in carries.
Why are we doing this?
I'm not doing it to I'm not going where you think I'm going. The point just being, like, is that it felt like they did that out of necessity, kind of like the Patriots did with Ramondre Stevenson. You know, they lost they lost Mechie, Jameson Williams, and Slade Bolden in the draft. Aggie Hall transfers to Texas. All they had left was Jermaine Burton, who transferred in this year from Georgia, and then a bunch of underclassmen who'd really never played. Ja'Cory Brooks had played a little bit.
Right.
So that's my other question. It's like, is this going to be another year of running the running? And Jahmyr Gibbs was the best player on their offense. It made a ton of reason. I mean, outside of Bryce Young, obviously. It made a ton of sense. There were reasons to give him the football as much as they did. But now the question is that, like, I hope O'Brien doesn't come in with that. Stevenson should still be a big part of the offense. He's really good, but you can't run the guy in the ground again. You got to get the wide receivers involved.
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
And even sorry to tag on to that, you talk about the importance of the slot. Well, what did they do late in the year? Jahmyr Gibbs is out there lining up in the slot late in the year as the slot receiver. Like, it was just wherever the ball is going, whatever position, we're going to put that guy there.
Right. I don't think so. I think though, and I'm hoping that it can be the same guy, but to me, what they need, and I know I'm going to say this, and people are going to say, "Oh, can Tyquan do that?" Like, maybe, but they need that guy that the ball carrier, right? Like, they need a dynamic ball carrier that when they run a 3-step slant off an RPO, that guy is taking it
right
to the house. A guy that when they run those swing screens with the motion off the RPO and they flip it out, and because they have the numbers on the screen, they need somebody that's going to take that screen and actually produce an explosive play out of it. That maybe not so much this past year at Alabama, but the 2021 Crimson Tide and the 2020 Crimson Tide, they had that guy, right? 2021, it was Jameson Williams. 2020, it was Devontae Smith and Waddle. Like, they had those explosive receivers.
So here's my thing, like 2021 versus 2022, right? It's different. Even though it's still Bill O'Brien, the offense is a little different. It's kind of just piecing together, all right, what changes did they make because the offense was evolving going into 2022 versus what changes did they make simply because they had to make them around the personnel?
Right. So, again, I think that guy, just like Waddle or Jameson Williams was for them, I think it could be the same guy, right? Like, I think you could put a guy like, just to use another draft example since we already used Zay Flowers, like, I think you can put a guy like Jordan Addison in the slot, and then I think you can also put him in motion and run him on RPOs as well, right? Like, I think it can be the same guy, which is a benefit to the Patriots. It's not like they have to go out and get two different guys, but that role, I think, is extremely important if they're going to try to do it this way. Like, if they're going to try to be vintage O'Brien combined with Alabama, like they are going to have to find that player somewhere. And that, I love him, but that's not Jacoby Myers, right?
Right.
And I know that maybe some people will hear that and think it could be Kendrick Bourne. Like maybe.
I think it could be, but
I still would want that guy to be shiftier than Kendrick Bourne in the slot.
Kendrick Bourne to me is like he's a matchup guy.
Yeah.
I think he can do everything. I think he can play the X. I think he can play slot. Just have him available to pick on matchups. They did that with him last year, talking about 2021. They did that with him in 2021. I thought that his assignments from week to week always changed. And they just kind of put him in spots to succeed, and they'd figure out the guy they wanted to pick on, and they picked on him. That, to me, is the best use of Kendrick Bourne because he's so versatile. You have to take advantage of that. Find the burner in the slot.
Right.
Like that, I'm with you on that one. Whether you said Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, I'm a big Tank Dell guy. I think you might be a bigger Tank Dell guy than me. I like Tank beg Dell. You to watch him.
But I had some people I talked to some people about Tank Dell, and he's like 160 pounds.
Yeah, but that's one of those things where you get him in an
Tank
NFL.
Dell's from Houston, for people that don't know. He's Houston's slot receiver. He also took over for Marcus Jones on returns at Houston, so he's got some explosiveness.
Marcus Jones was only 170 when he came in. He's up to 180, 185
I know,
now.
but
you get these guys, the weight thing, add whatever it says, add 15 pounds because you get him in an NFL weight room.
I don't even think it's just the frame. I think the other thing that stood out from Houston, they were very particular of where they aligned him up, and they kind of had to cater the offense to his alignment, right? Making sure that he could get off the line of scrimmage and avoid certain.
Well, we're
situations.
talking about a guy you're not putting him outside to play press man if you draft him, right? So
sure. I'm third or fourth round. I'm
okay.
In. I'm in. I think that's a really important position in this offense, regardless of where Bill O'Brien has really been. It's been a point that they've emphasized, besides maybe Houston because of Hopkins, right? But other than there, I think everywhere else he's gone, the slot has been a high-volume role, just like it's been here for 2 decades. So I think it's an important spot.
Hang on. I need a stall to pull this up, but I think... you go back to when he was at Penn State, which was 2012 and 2013.
Maybe his best work.
Wasn't that Allen Robinson?
Allen Robinson might have been on those teams, yeah.
They weren't. I'm trying to remember who the slot receiver was there.
And Allen Robinson was a slot. He's a big slot.
Were they running him out of the slot there? I'm
so
sure.
Long ago. That's what Allen Robinson did in the pros.
He had 77 catches. Nobody else had more than 36. That was in 2012.
I'm
2011.
sure he was playing the big slot.
Yeah. Okay.
All right, last thing, and then we can take some of these calls. The other thing that was super refreshing from watching some of my old O'Brien coaching clinic cut-ups and things like that was listening to him talk about protections. And I'm going to nerd out here for a second on protections, but it's kind of hard to talk about it without, I need a whiteboard or something really to get into it. But they run a lot of empty, right? Or Bill O'Brien likes to run a lot of empty. And he would talk about how he gave Brady protection answers to cover zero out of empty, or just man blitz out of empty in general. Because if you're an empty, you have to know that the defense might try to overload you, right? And you have to have answers to that. So what the Patriots would do most of the time is they would put guys on dual reads, which means that usually it's inside out read, right? And they'll say, okay, you got there's 3 blockers and there's 4 guys standing over you. So one guy's dual, right? So you got 2 guys. And if it's 3 rushing, we're 3 on 3 to that side. We should pick this up. Okay. So then what he would say would be, Brady would point and he'd make a mic point, and then he'd point and he'd say, if that guy comes, then I'm hot, right? If 4 come, now I'm hot. If 1 comes from this direction, I'm hot. If 2 come from that direction, I'm hot. And that would not only tell the offensive line who they were supposed to be blocking, the receivers would also be aware of what the call is, right, from a defensive perspective. This was something that the Patriots last year looked like they had no clue what they were doing when it came to protections. Was not just we're 4 over 3, how are we picking this up, but also who's hot and which receiver's adjusting his route in case there is pressure coming. These are the little things that just didn't seem to get through to the Patriots. Well, I don't think they completely ignored it, because I have too much respect for NFL coaches to think that they just didn't even talk about it in the meeting rooms and things like that, but they just didn't execute it on the field. And it wasn't just free runners and like we didn't pick up, the protection properly. It was also that the receivers weren't aware of, okay, if this guy comes, now we're hot. We don't have enough blockers to pick everybody up. That's what I mean by hot. So we have to throw the ball. And so Mac Jones is standing there in the pocket. They bring 4 to their 3. He's hot, and he's got 3 vertical routes going up the field, and he's just like looking around. He's toast. He's sitting duck.
How many times did that happen on third down this year? Just so I'll editorialize that just for everybody.
For everybody else.
Because you went into it. So hot receiver or the quarterback being hot or throwing hot refers to just the quarterback being exceptionally attractive. No. So basically what that means, is if there's a blitz coming that you can't block, like Evan's talking about the numbers there, right? 4 on 3, 3 on 2. There's a receiver who has an assignment that if the quarterback calls that out, that blitz is coming, he scraps whatever his route is and basically just turns and looks for the football.
Right.
Because the ball's coming out immediately to beat the blitz. Normally you're throwing into the blitz. Like I would say the hot receiver is normally designed to throw into the blitz.
Yes.
That's what that means. And it is something the Patriots struggled with. And this is something I've talked about, these are nuances that you pick up being in offensive game plan meetings, offensive rooms, all of that for years and years and years. This is why when we talk about, Matt Patricia wasn't the guy for the job, this is why, because that's not something as a defensive coach you're thinking about.
They had no pre-snap plan.
Right.
So they would get to the line of scrimmage. They would call. So the Patriots, I don't know if it's still this way because who the heck knows what terminology they were using last year. For the most part, the Patriots' protections are numbers in the 70s. Okay, so they'll get to the line of scrimmage and they'll say, 74 Haas X follow, right? Like that's a play call. 74 is the protection. Okay, so 74 could, it could be anything, right? But that's a protection. 5-man protection, 5-man plus the back, 6-man protection, whatever. It could be anything. So they would get to the line of scrimmage. They would call that play in the huddle, and that would be the protection for the play, and they wouldn't adjust. They wouldn't change it, right? They wouldn't get to the line of scrimmage and say, well, something's going on over here. This guy's giving me a blitz tell. This guy is, capped, which means that there's a defender behind him, which usually means that there might be pressure coming from that area of the field. They wouldn't adjust.
Right.
And they would just run the play the way that it was called in the huddle. And having a coach that's going to say, okay, this is what we're doing out of this play if it's too high. This is what we're doing if it's post safety. This is what we're doing if it's blitz zero. Like those are the types of conversations you have to have as an offense, right? Especially for it to run well against blitz. And if you don't have those types of conversations, you don't have everybody on the same page, and you don't have that understanding as an offense, then that's what happens in what we saw all last year, which is Mac running for his life, no receiver anywhere near him to try to throw the football to, and usually a sack, right? And now I think that they have a coach that's going to get in there and say, here's a cut-up of us running this play against 6 different defensive looks. Right. And this is what we're going to do against all these different defensive looks. That's going to be refreshing for those guys, that they have that type of that type of knowledge, like that someone that has that ability,
that type of preparation,
that foresight. Yeah. That preparation. So I'm really excited about it from a mental standpoint. I think it's just going to be so much cleaner to have everybody on the same page, to have answers to the test. Like you hear guys like Orlovsky talks about this a lot with the Patriots offense on ESPN. What answers does a quarterback have to what the defense is showing him? What tools are at his disposal to then say, something, they're showing pressure over here. I need to slide the protection. I need to make a new mic point. I need to tell this guy over here that he's hot if these two guys come. If this guy comes over here, then that guy's the hot. Does he have that kind of does he have that, right?
Well, he should now.
He should now. And I think that alone is really going to help this offense a ton. All right, let's take some of these calls, and then we'll get into kind of spinning this forward as well. Christian, thanks for hanging on. Sorry to keep you on hold for so long.
No, man. I love the deep dive that you guys do on this show as opposed to just regular, Patriots Unfiltered.
Thank you.
Question. Hey, man. A question for you guys. What years was Bill O'Brien coordinator for the Patriots that they won a Super Bowl?
That they won a Super Bowl?
They won a Super Bowl.
He's saying that Bill O'Brien didn't win a Super Bowl, so
That's
we're too
true.
excited.
That's true. He didn't win a Super Bowl.
Right. So second thing, I kind of find it hard to believe when you guys say like, oh, we'll finally have a coach that will shout out the pre-snap protections. To me, it seems unfathomable that Bill wouldn't have, again, having ultimate oversight, saying something like, oh, do we have any pre-snap protection options? To me, it would seem weird that out of everything that Bill overlooks and oversees, he wouldn't have asked that very fundamental, simple question, and they wouldn't have addressed that. So I don't know that they didn't have those things in place. It possibly the execution of it, or Mac Jones's sort of recognition that he needed to change to adjust the pre-snap. That might be more in order. That it just wasn't existing. Now we have someone that can do it. And then lastly, I really do see Tyquan Thornton, if Bill O'Brien really can put his imprint on it, developing into like a long, like a Randy Moss threat. He has faster speed than Randy, so being that quick kill you by 1,000 cuts offense, then putting something over the top seems really, really, really like something that we should be able to implement. I'll take it off air.
Yeah, no, I definitely, thanks for the call, Christian. I definitely think that Tyquan is much better suited. They're all better suited in this offense than before.
Can we just talk about how that call started with Bill O'Brien's not a good hire because he didn't win a Super Bowl, but he's going to turn Tyquan Thornton into Randy Moss?
That's true. I mean,
that was a roller coaster.
That's a Patriots
real quick
spin
on the
right
Super
there.
Bowl thing.
Yeah.
He was the offense coordinator, not the head coach. That 2011 offense
one of the best
was a
Patriots
wagon
offense all time. Yeah.
The defense was not any of those years. Really. That defense was old.
Right.
They were losing pieces left and right. They didn't have that number one corner. It's that window after Asante Samuel left, before they got Aqib Talib, where they were trying to mix and match with all these late round cast off corners.
Isn't Julian Edelman playing corner?
Julian Edelman played corner one of those years, but I'm talking about when you had guys like Antoine Molden out there, right? Sergio Brown. I don't put them not winning a Super Bowl in that era on O'Brien. If they had won a Super Bowl in that era, O'Brien takes it to another level.
Yeah,
that offense was excellent.
And to this day,
it's a what's it called? The argument's just weird because he was in charge of the offense, and the offense was excellent. It was Super Bowl caliber.
Right. To this day, I will go to the grave saying that they win the Super Bowl in 2011 if Gronk is 100%.
Yeah.
They win.
I mean,
they
if
beat
anything,
the Giants. I'm sorry. He was playing on a high ankle sprain 2 weeks out from suffering a high ankle sprain in the AFC Championship game, and he could barely move. So he went from the most dominant player in football that year to like a shell of himself because of the injury. I still think they win that game if Gronk is 100%. But that's besides the point.
That they got to the Super Bowl with that defense is actually a testament to Bill O'Brien.
Yeah, at the time, I don't know if it still is, but at the time, that was statistically the worst defense to ever be in a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
They were 32nd in the league, I think, in total yards allowed. So they were historically bad on defense for that time period. I think now we have defenses that give up 6,000 yards.
Games change, but yes.
Anyways, the other thing that he said about the protections, I'm not saying that they didn't try to implement those types of things. I will say I know for 100% fact that they watered down the protection system. 100%. So the adjustments were I can't speak 100% to the adjustments at the line of scrimmage, but I know for a fact that they tried to strip the protection system of some of the things I was talking about, like the dual reads. So that 110% happened. There were guys in that locker room, I know others have reported about this, like Greg Bedard and things like that on your station, Alex, that felt like if they had the old protection system that they would have picked up more of the blitzes that they didn't this year, right? In some of the adjustments. The other thing that I would say is that it's not, he mentioned execution. Coaching isn't just about drawing the X's and O's up on the whiteboard. It's also teaching it.
Yeah.
And getting it through to the players and being able to implement the types of things that they're trying to do. So no matter where you fall in that category, whether it was strictly execution by the players or the system being watered down, the bottom line is that the protection was significantly worse than it's ever really been.
Right.
So, and it wasn't just guys losing one-on-one matchups all the time where they just need better players. They do need some better tackles, but a lot of it was also recognition and pickup, right? And just getting hat on a hat. So that comes down to plan and pre-snap and coaching, right? That's what that comes down to. So no matter where you put it in the
we back?
Yeah, I think we're good. I think it's just our headphones.
Okay.
No matter where you put it in the blame pie, like whoever you blame, the point is it wasn't good enough.
Right.
And O'Brien comes in, and I think he makes it better. That's all. All right. Ben in Maryland. What's up, Ben?
Hey, guys. I'm at school, so I got to be quick. But I spent all last night, watching Bama film, Pat's film, the O'Brien coaching clinic, and I was so excited to come on here and tell you guys everything I found out. But we already touched on most of it, but I just want to run down my list, and you guys can tell me if I'm correct.
Sure.
Okay.
I said Bama has a lot of pre-snap motion and a lot of moving around, which helps confuse defenses, and you guys touched on that. But they also run the same formation. It looks like a lot, but it's different plays each time. So I thought that was unique. Lots of empty formation, but it looks like they build their offense around the running back. And I said, could that be another big year for Stevenson? You re-sign Harris? I don't know. And then the Patriots ran a lot of RPOs, but there's nothing with the RPOs. It was like there's no slants, there's no schemes with Johnny Smith. So I was just wondering if that would change this year.
Yeah, good job, Ben. And I absolutely love that calling from school.
Calling during school,
That's such a you and I move there.
Kid's got the right idea.
So when I was in college, and my parents listen to the show sometimes, and I think my dad's going to kill me for saying this, but when I was in college, I used to watch game film during class. I had a tablet, and I'd come with the tablet and had Game Pass downloaded on the tablet, and I would just watch. People ask me like, how did I learn like the X's and O's? I would watch all 13 games from the whole week in college, and I would just watch it and over and over and over again. And although I didn't know necessarily what I know now, it helped the game slow down.
You just absorb it,
right? And the game slowed down, and it wasn't moving as quickly anymore for me after a while. And that's when I really was able to start to break it all down. So I love that. That's a total us move, is to be at school and watching Patriots and Alabama tape instead of doing what you're supposed to be doing.
I used to me and a buddy of mine, we had a couple classes together. We had a notebook we'd pass back and forth, or we had two, right? So I would draw like an offensive play, like I'd design one, and then he'd design a defensive play. It's like during class, and then we'd pass them back and forth, be like, all right, who's design one? And then, I'd switch and I'd be the defense and stuff like that. So
the reason we both went to Ithaca.
Look, stay in school, but
stay in school. We got degrees. It was important. All right, we both went to Ithaca, but the reason why my parents were really big on sending me to a smaller school is because they knew I would F off during class if I was in one of those big like lecture halls, and still I somehow figured out how to F off in class. Anyways, so there's one thing that he mentioned. One of the first things that he mentioned that we hadn't fully touched on, and of course we went on that whole spiel, and now I forget what it was.
Right, we were just patting ourselves on the back for being football fans. It was a good point too. That they'll run similar looks or similar formations with all these different looks. That's going back to Era Perkins. Which is like the core of the Patriots offense.
Yeah, great point. So I posted something on Twitter.
It was a really good point.
Last week about Alabama running 3 different plays out of the same look or the same formation. They used the same motion and they ran the same exact formation, and the play played out 3 separate ways.
This was the one with Oots, right?
With Oots, my guy.
Oots.
The other thing that I saw them do a ton, which I just can't tell you, I just didn't see a ton of from the Patriots last year. Saw it a lot in 21 and a lot in general, obviously with Brady, is they would run the same play out of different formation. That's the same play, but they get to the same, and they'd hit it like 6 different ways.
Yeah.
The Patriots didn't do that, right? Like the Patriots last year, if they ran dagger, they hit dagger one way. Like it was right now with O'Brien and with Bryce Young last year at Alabama, like you can watch them run like let's take mesh, right? The cross underneath crossers with either the dig or a wheel or something, and they would hit it all 3 ways. They'd hit it to all 3 different receivers. Like that type of diversity, but also that's the simplicity of it. The fact that it's still the same play, but we can hit it 3 different ways. That is the type of stuff that puts defenses in absolute blenders, right? Like here comes the motion, And last time they motioned, they threw a screen to the receiver. This time they motioned and they threw a fake screen, right? They bluff screen and then they run the guys up the field. Like that type of stuff makes it so much harder to defend. And I think from a play calling perspective too, one of the biggest things that we always griped on with Patricia was that there was no sequencing to the plays, right? Like the last play was not married up to the play before, and it was not married up to a play they ran in the first quarter. Like they were just grabbing plays out of a hat, right? Like, right, okay, this play, first down, we're going to run this. Then second down, we're going to forget about that. We're going to run this, right? And like they just were all over the place. O'Brien's offense, it builds up to stuff. It makes sense. It connects, right? Where they ran this play in the first quarter. Now it's fourth quarter tie game against Tennessee. They need a drive. We're going to run this play that looks like the play we ran in the first quarter, but it's actually something different, right? And those are the types of things that I think an experienced and not just experienced offensive coach, but an experienced play caller. And that was why it was so important to me when they made this hire, that they got somebody that had called plays before. Because I think you really see the difference in that type of thing, that type of foresight to be able to steal something you ran in the first quarter, then run it again in the fourth quarter, but have it be different. Like those are the types of things that you get from calling plays in NFL and college games over long periods of time. Like you don't just wake up with that skill. And I think we saw that last year come to fruition. I think a lot of coaches struggle with that early on in their play calling. I think it's something that Ken Dorsey in Buffalo has struggled with in his first season as the play caller, is having everything marry up together. It's a good point by Ben. I'm glad he brought that up.
Yeah.
All right. John and Newton. What's up, John? John, you there? Going once. John. All right. You can call back in, John, and we'll get you on the air. Aaron, what's going on?
Hey, how you guys doing?
Hey.
Good.
All right, so what I'm looking forward to, I'm not going to lie, I'm not big on the Bill O'Brien thing, but I am warming up to it. I'm just happy that we actually have an offensive coordinator. But I did see the difference just this year in Max. Like, the more confident he felt in a play, or more confident he felt, I seen him get the ball out better, you know what I mean? His overall play was dependent, to me, in my eyes, at least on his comfortability. And I feel like Bill O'Brien's going to bring him a lot more comfort as far as, like you guys said, elaborating on him getting the play and be like, okay, the defense isn't going to tee up on it because it's a little bit different. You know what I mean? I just feel like he's going to be a lot more comfortable.
Yeah. Thanks for the call, Aaron. I think that's probably the biggest big picture thing, right? We get into all the nitty gritty as we do, but the biggest big picture thing is the comfort of the quarterback and just the comfort of everybody on offense to really understand this is what we're doing here, right? And this is what we're doing. If the defense does this is what we're doing, right? Like that sort of thing, I think is really important. All right, Eldred, give it to me, Eldred. What's your take?
Hey, Alex. Hey, Evan.
Hey.
How you doing?
Good.
Question. I'm glad Bill O'Brien did come back. But my question is, with the offense in the flux last year, how long do you think it would take to see a turnaround? I know we're expecting right off the bat, even with preseason and OTAs and all of that. Realistic, when do you expect to see a turnaround?
Yeah, it's a good question, Eldred. Thanks for the call. I think that there'll be some immediacy to the functionality of the offense, right? I think the offense is going to look cleaner right off the bat. The personnel stuff that we've discussed, I think, is a bigger question in terms of how good this could actually be. And that's what I wrote today when I wrote my big piece on this. The floor of the offense is now significantly higher.
Right.
You know that you're going to have a functional professional baseline. The question is how high is that ceiling? And that gets more into, I would say, the personnel decisions that they make in the offseason.
Right. It's too early to say, hey, how much is this going to improve the offense? We don't know what the offense is going to look like. Are they going to have a guy like Jerry Jeudy? Are they going to have Zay Flowers? What are they doing at tackle? Right. How much can they fix Mac's mechanics of what was broken in 2022? I know hiring Bill O'Brien feels like the end of a process for a lot of people, and in a sense, it is. It's also the beginning of a process because now, he doesn't walk in, snap his fingers, and everything's fixed. Like, there's a lot of
Right.
work to do, and that's not a Bill O'Brien thing. Whoever got the job is going to have to do a lot of work.
Right.
You know, how much can they get it done? This is why there's those reports that Adrian Clem's going to have a second interview. Getting a real offensive line coach in here, you hopefully get a more cohesive group up front. That's going to go a long way. I'm not saying Bill O'Brien can't or won't play a part in that, but Bill O'Brien's not doing everything. He's going to delegate things. You got to figure out who's going to be there. And then, of course, who are the players? What are they going to build this thing around? We talked a lot about who's going to be in the slot and things like that. This is a massive step in the right direction, but we're hardly done with the whole conversation about how do the Patriots fix their offense.
This is probably the biggest box that they had to check. But
Well, I mean,
it's only box one.
This one
right?
had to be first.
Right.
Now, okay, hiring assistant coaches and like an offensive line coach probably has to be second, but the order of operations is kind of open from here.
Yeah.
You're going to draft a tackle, you're going to sign a tackle, you're going to draft a receiver, you're going to trade for a receiver, right? That sort of thing. You're going to pay Jacoby Myers. That's all. You can go in any number of different directions, but the first thing had to be you had to bring in the guy with the vision of what this whole thing's going to look like. And nothing could happen. Really, not even some of the defensive stuff. I don't think any of it could happen until they brought in the offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
So this is now we're off. Here we go. We're off and running on the offseason.
And now we have a real offseason, right? Like where we have a real offensive coordinator and a real setup on defense,
so
and we can
here's
actually get into the players.
Here's my other take on that. When you say a real offseason, like a Patriots offseason, I've thrown out a lot of things on this show, on other shows, and people are like, well, how realistic is that? And Chris Gasper was on Felger and Maz last Friday, and
he said some stuff.
He did say some stuff, but at the end of that conversation, he said something really interesting that sort of sparked my mind. Felger asked him, is any of this you're talking about realistic? Or is this them? He said, is any of what you're talking about them?
Yeah.
Talking about like the Patriots, the typical Patriots. And Gasper said, well, is any of this in terms of what they've done so far this offseason? And the statement, not traditionally something they would do. I think the kind of candidates they were looking at for the offensive coordinator job a bit out of the picture, the whole handling of the Gerard Mayo situation. And it reminded me, Evan, of when we first started doing our first podcast.
Yeah.
And around the time we started, it was around this time of year, there were those reports from like Tom Curran and Mike Reese, uncharacteristically aggressive. Do you remember that? I hammered that home spring.
And that's exactly what happened.
So we haven't gotten like an uncharacteristically aggressive report yet, but I did from the way they've operated so far. And if you remember early that offseason, Bill did an interview with, I think it was Shaughnessy.
Yeah.
That was like, Bill's talking to Shaughnessy like in the offseason. What is this? And it kind of kicked that whole thing off, but like it set the tone that this is going to be different. I am getting some uncharacteristically aggressive
well, they
vibes.
Need to be, right?
Right, and they do. And look, when the 2021 offseason, you can nitpick here and there, and for every Matthew Judon, there's an Nelson Aguilar, right? But
they made them a better football team.
Overall, that offseason was a net positive.
Yeah.
They are starting where they started from that year, and this is coming off the Cam Newton season. They are starting from a much higher point right now. If they were to have a comparable offseason, I don't mean the same players, but
or the same money. I don't think they're going to throw money around like that.
But the same aggressiveness. Well, they do. They are going to have like top 10 cap space in the league.
Yeah, no, that was like $300 million spent in free agency. I don't think we're going there.
But relatively, the circumstances were different financially coming off the pandemic. I'm saying relatively speaking to the rest of the league. If they have another offseason like that, they're in really good shape.
Yeah.
They're in really good shape. So I don't know. I'm throwing it out there. I have sort of that same, we don't have the report, but don't some of the vibes feel similar to the uncharacteristically aggressive offseason? Although you're probably dreading having to hear me say that 20 times a show for the next 2 months.
I love the Bill O'Brien hire. I just gushed about it for an hour. So I'm certainly not against the Bill O'Brien hire by any means. But them bringing back Bill O'Brien feels like vintage them. Right? Like, so I think that
But the way in which they did it
was a little different.
Yeah.
It was a little different. All right. Spinning it forward now a little bit on the coaching staff. You mentioned Adrian Clem's name. There are reports out there that Adrian Clem is coming back for a second interview, and that seemingly is to have a top assistant role on Bill O'Brien's staff, right? O'Brien's the offensive coordinator. We know that. So Adrian Clem maybe offensive line coach, which is probably the second biggest spot on your coaching staff besides coordinator.
Yeah.
And then I would also mention run game coordinator as a possibility. That's a title he has currently at Oregon. And one of the things that I look at
Oregon had a good run game this year.
I look at with O'Brien, that I'm not saying he can't do it. Just like I said earlier about something else I can't remember, under center. I'm not saying that he can't do these things. But since he went to Houston, he has had a mobile quarterback. He's had Deshaun Watson and he's had Bryce Young. So he's going back into stationary quarterback world.
Yeah.
And at Alabama, it is really difficult to find a run without an option attached for the quarterback, right? When you have Bryce Young, you're always going to try to use his legs as an influence.
Did you watch, after he got hurt, it felt like they were hesitant to run him? Maybe he was hesitant to run. The options were there. I didn't watch it as closely. 99%
of their runs at least had him holding the backside with the threat of him keeping the football. Okay. Whether he actually kept it was probably few and far between, but just having that backside pull of, I can't crash down because Bryce Young could take off over Mac Jones. You're crashing down, right? You're not worried about that. So how are they going to scheme it up in the run game, I think is interesting. I don't think O'Brien is really a big run game guy, quite frankly. The 2011 Patriots offense they
didn't run the ball.
Yeah, they were past 70%.
That was an arena. That was an arena offense.
Right. So they don't. I don't know how much of it he really emphasizes, but I think with this quarterback, with the strengths that they have in the interior of the line, with Ramondre Stevenson coming back, this team wants to run the ball a little bit. And so I wonder if a guy like Clem comes in, O-line coach / run game coordinator, maybe he doesn't get the run game coordinator title at first, but he's a big part of the run game. I think that's going to be a big thing. What are your thoughts on Clem? I know a lot of people aren't really that familiar with him, and they've heard some horror stories about him from Pittsburgh, which aren't great, to be fair. But I don't know how much we want to hold out against them.
Yeah, my big thing I like with him, and first off, I think he would contribute in the running game. You need a real offensive line coach. They're first tackle, and you can't have another year like 2019 where you invest a first-round pick in a player and then don't have a real position coach.
Yeah,
for
You're
that
talking
player.
About Harry and Joe Judge.
And Joe Judge, yeah. I think I might have said Nick Caserio last week. I apologize for that. But
sorry, Nick.
Sorry, Nick. Yeah, not his fault. Okay. Anyway, I think Clem contributes there. So that's a big one. The other big box for me, and this could be Clem, this could be, we haven't heard anything more about Jefferson and McCardell, but bringing a guy like that as a passing game coordinator, a big part of the reason the Patriots are in this spot, right, is when they went from Josh McDaniels, there was no smooth transition. There was no obvious guy. They maintained Nick Caley. They maybe had a chance to have a smooth transition, but they didn't.
Yeah.
And obviously now there's no smooth transition.
Right.
If you have a guy like Adrian Clem, who is with Bill O'Brien regularly, right, is involved in the design of the offense, is involved in the calling of the plays, when Bill O'Brien leaves, and I think Bill O'Brien's here to reset his stock and go get a head coaching job, when Bill O'Brien leaves, you have the next guy. It won't be a question.
Right.
It will be, all right, Adrian Clem's bit, because run game coordinator, pass game coordinator, essentially what that means, this is dumbing it down a little bit, but essentially what that means is assistant offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
Right? There's no, all right, well, we're going to have to do the interview process, and what about this guy, and what about that guy? Nope. Adrian Clem, you're up.
Right.
And I think having that smooth transition, especially if Mac is still the quarterback, you're already on 3 season, 3 years. I'm not saying Bill O'Brien's going to be one and done, but that kind of continuity for everybody would be nice. So there's the run game element of it, and I like Clem for that. Oregon ran the ball. I also like that he was in an environment that reinvigorated a quarterback everybody thought was done in Bo Nix. I mean, Bo Nix, he should have never transferred from Auburn, and what I mean by that is his dad played there. His dad won a national championship there. He was one of the highest recruits they'd ever gotten. He was supposed to be Auburn's success story. And for a guy like that, with that background, with that storyline to transfer, is just a suggestion of a massive failure. Now, that's on multiple people's parts, but people were writing him off. He goes to Oregon, and I'm not saying Adrian Clem is the reason that he turned it around, and Bo Nix was a Heisman finalist this year, but he was in a room He was with coaches. He kind of went through that process of reinvigorating a quarterback. It's not exactly...
I mean, he's the associate head coach, right? He was O-line associate head coach and run game coordinator.
It's not quite apples to apples, but it's not... All right, it's not apples to oranges. It's like Granny Smith apples to like Golden Delicious apples, right? There is some carryover there. So there's a lot to like there with Clem. There is the stuff from Pittsburgh. I don't know about, like, I wasn't in the room. I don't know. I'm not going to speak on it. But between you need a real offensive line coach to improve the offensive line, you have a clear next guy if Bill O'Brien leaves, and you get a guy who indirectly has kind of been a part of a big-time quarterback success story, checks a bunch of boxes for me.
The biggest thing to me is the offensive line coach part of it, because
but you covered all that. So
well, there's a lot of the protection stuff that I went over, but it's also, I would say, just last year they had a lot of trouble just on game day with delegation of who's doing what. Remember the beginning of the year, Patricia was trying to pull double duty. He was trying to coach the offensive line and call plays and coach up Mac and do all of this. And then they bring Billy Yates from upstairs, downstairs, and he's a little bit more involved on the sideline. I know
wasn't David Andrews doing it at one point?
So I know for a fact that David Andrews and James Ferentz both had to pitch in a lot in terms of coaching up the line. Had the tablet in the middle of the huddle on the bench, and like there's so many NFL films cuts of Dante like in the middle of the offensive line, like screaming out crap at them, like, if they did this last time and they're gonna like this type of stuff, right? And like they just didn't have that. And I want one offensive line coach. I want Billy with the quarterback. I want the offensive line coach with the offensive line, and I want Adrian Clem or whoever it ends up being. It certainly looks like it's going to be Adrian Clem. I want Adrian Clem working with Cole Strange, working with the first round tackle.
Yeah, I mean, player development's a huge part of this.
Player development is huge on it as well.
You're going to use probably back-to-back first-round picks on offensive linemen. You should have a good offensive line coach.
It felt like last year that they were playing a game of telephone where things had to go through so many different sets of eyes and ears that by the time it actually got out onto the field, who the heck knows what the messaging was, right? Like, was it, what Matt Patricia told us, or was it what Billy Yates told us, or was it, David Andrews telling us, or whatever? Now you have one guy doing this, you have one guy doing that. And I think this speaks to just in general as well, the coaching staff. I do think that we're going to get actual Bill O'Brien's the offensive coordinator, Clem's on offensive line, and like it's going to be very crystal clear what everybody's doing. And I think that's important. I don't care about us. Like, I don't care that we don't necessarily know. What's important is that the players have that clear messaging.
This is like the defense in 2021, right? Where we didn't know we didn't know what the corporate flow chart looked like, but it was pretty clear that inside the building they did. And I stress this all the time. Just because we don't know, as long as they know, and they being the players and everybody, right?
100%.
Players and the coaching staff, as long as they know, it's annoying that we don't know, but it doesn't make them any worse of a team, right? And with the defensive staff, there was a lot of, there's no defined titles, but I always kind of defended it. Well, it seems like they know within the building, and that's good enough for me.
Yeah.
And then with the offense this year, I kind of started out on that, well, look how it worked on the defense, and they clearly know in the building. That got away from them quick. I don't think there was a clear line of command by the end of the year. And like you're saying, I think just clarifying that this year would be big.
All right. We're going to wrap it up on the Shrine Bowl. I'll give you 10, 15 minutes here, Alex, to get your Shrine Bowl takes out before we head to Vegas bright and early tomorrow morning.
Yep.
You going to sleep here? I might sleep here. No, I'm just kidding.
I would. They let me.
Bright and early tomorrow morning. Alex and I will be out on the flight to Vegas for the Shrine Bowl. Very excited to not only go see the prospects, go see the coaching staff, just the whole I've never been to the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl. I've never been to one of these showcases before. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what kind of stuff we get out of it. Who are some of the guys that you're looking for? We talked so much about the coaching staff already. I think we got all that out. Is there anybody in particular besides Zay Flowers, who I think we all know is I would say probably the consensus top guy that has committed to playing in the Shrine Bowl is Zay Flowers?
It's him and Travius Hodges Tomlinson. I would say are the top two.
TCU corner.
So I'll get to him in a bit. Let's start with the wide receivers, though. You talk about that big slot maybe replacing Jacoby Myers. Jake Bobo from UCLA, local kid from Concord.
A Bobo.
Yeah, his name's going to do great here.
Yeah.
6'5", 215, lined up.
Can you imagine your shows if they draft a guy named Bobo?
I know. I know. Lined up, inline, slot, a little bit on the boundary. He's not quite as big as LJ Humphrey, and he's a little bit more athletic, but like you put him in that role with some more wide receiver type responsibilities. Like, I don't know that it's the speed you're looking for in the slot, but like I watch him and there's a lot of Jacoby Myers in his game, but he's a bit more physically imposing.
Okay.
Another receiver I like, and this is a guy that I'm just personally a fan of, Bryce Ford Wheaton from West Virginia.
Yeah.
Balled out against Pitt in the backyard brawl. Like, this guy shows up in big games. 6'3", 224, excellent 50-50 receiver. Like, he wins every jump ball. He doesn't do much more than that. Like, this is a late project guy, but the other thing he does, he is an excellent gunner in punt coverage. Twice this year, he timed up like his rush where he hit the returner as the guy was fielding the ball and forced a fumble. He is excellent covering punts.
Drafting him in the second round now.
Well, he's a projected 7th-round pick. I'll give you
second round.
Give you a couple running backs. They like production at the position. Guys who've proven they can produce in college.
Yeah.
Mohamed Ibrahim from Minnesota,
Big
third in the
time
nation
producer,
last year in rushing, 1,600 yards. And I'll give you one more. This is a really interesting one. I was surprised to see his name on the list. Travis Dye from USC. I don't know how much you watched him.
He's a bigger back.
No, he's not.
I thought he's a bigger back.
No, he's a 3-down guy, like a true 3-down back. He was one of the best pass-blocking running backs in college football this year.
There we go.
He was supposed to be like a...
Because there's a lot of big backs on this.
Right. No, this
Shrine
is a
Bowl
pass-catching
roster.
back. He was supposed to be like a late day 2, early day 3 pick, and then he suffered a knee injury in November that ended his season, and we don't know exactly what it was.
Right. That's what these things are for.
Right. They came out and said it was season-ending but not career-altering. So I don't know if he's going to be on the field, but you watch him. He's a Patriots back. The fact that they're going to get to talk to him is big.
Yeah.
Tight ends. I think
Schoonmaker.
Schoonmaker. I think
Schoonmaker. Schoonmaker.
Whatever. I don't know. You might be right.
I don't know.
You still have Hunter Henry and Jonnu Smith under contract for a year. Take a tight end early on day 3. Let him develop behind those guys. Red shirt. Get going in year 2. This kid's 6'6", 250, growing as a run blocker, capable receiver, supposed to go early on day 3, easy. And then if the fullback comes back, Jack Coletto won the Paul Hornig Award this year.
That's Marcus Jones won the Paul
Marcus
Hornig.
Jones, Lynn Bowden, and Jabril Peppers have all won it. He also plays linebacker.
Second round.
He's supposed to go late. And then a Jonnu Smith type of player, Princeton Fant. You've watched Tennessee, actually. They're fullback tight end hybrid.
Yeah.
I don't know if you noticed him, Princeton Fant. He'll be there. A Jonnu Smith type. At tackle, most of the top tackles in this class, they know where they're going. They're not doing any of the All-Star games. Jackson Kirkland's really interesting.
I know.
From
he's
Washington.
on my list.
Is he? So he was an All Pac-12 left tackle in 2021. Was supposed to come out in last year's draft. Hurt his ankle. Was like, well, I'm not going to be able to do pro days or anything. Went back. Got moved to guard in the second game because they didn't have a guard, and they had to move him inside. Played an excellent season at left guard, and now he's back in the draft. And is he a tackle? Is he a guard? You know, what's his role? Clearly a team player. It's going to be really interesting to see how they use him this year.
Yeah, Jackson Kirkland is a guy that I thought coming out in 2021, if he had came out, he was going to be a top 100 guy.
Yeah, I thought he was like maybe a fringe first-round pick.
Yeah, so he's got a lot of talent. The other tackle that I had written down,
Dalton Wagner from Arkansas.
I knew him as well. Carter Warren from Pittsburgh. Have you seen him play?
I have a couple more Pitt guys here, but I'm not as familiar with him. No.
Mauler. Like
okay.
a typical right tackle Patriot. Mauler, big dude.
Okay.
Really blows people off the line of scrimmage. Like you put a guy like Carter Warren, assuming he develops. I'm not sitting here saying he's, John Hanna. But Carter Warren next to Mike Onwenu, like that's a bulldozing side of the line, right? That's what, when it was Trent Brown on Onwenu or Cannon and Shaq Mason, like they like that right side to be sturdy. I think he can be a guy like that. All right, I'm going to give you one interior lineman. I'm going to give you an interior lineman.
I like that. Offense or defense?
Offense.
Oh, okay. I was ready to switch to defense. Okay.
Ricky Stormberg from Arkansas.
Okay. They do like Arkansas.
He's a center, I think, at the next level. And David Andrews is going to be back next year.
Yeah.
But David Andrews is getting up there. He is. Now, they really like Cody Russi in the building.
Yeah.
They really do. So maybe they think Cody Russi is going to be that guy. But that's a really important position from all sorts of aspects, right? Knowledge, all that type of stuff. And we do have to start thinking about David Andrews and the future at that position. I think Stromberg is going to be like a 4th or a 5th round pick. It might be a little high for them.
Can he play guard too or no?
Probably.
Because they do need depth at guard. So if you bring him in as a backup guard in like a long-term center in the 4th round, I could see that.
Probably.
I think that's justifiable.
Yeah, and the other thing I'd mention, we mentioned switching over to defense.
Yeah.
There's some really good long corners that are going to
All right, we're going to get there. We're going to get there.
Long guy in this draft in general.
Yeah.
Like there's a ton of corners in this draft. I know the guy from Tomlinson from TCU is not this, but there's some really like 6'1", 6'2", lanky corners in this draft to play on the boundary, and there's a couple that's going to be at the Shrine.
And by the way, everybody I've mentioned so far, and I don't know about the center you just said from Arkansas, but everybody I've mentioned so far is on the West team, is on the Patriots team.
Yeah, a couple of these guys are on East. The other guy just on offense, A.T. Perry's going to be there.
A.T. Perry,
from Wake Forest. He's on the East team.
Another one of those big receivers.
Carter Warren's on East, but the other guys I mentioned are on the Patriots.
All right, I'm going to give you another pick guy. Habakkuk Baldonado from Pittsburgh.
Of course.
Defensive end, had a career year in 2021. He had a team high, I think it was 12 sacks. And then last year, you could tell like he was focused on developing his game as a run defender. Like he has this big year as a pass rusher. He's 6'5", 260, so he's a little smaller, but he kind of reminds me of Dietrich Wise watching him, where he's just like a good, technically sound, handles his responsibilities football player. He's supposed to go in the same range of the draft. The other interesting thing, and they like guys like this, I like guys like this, he didn't start playing football till he was in high school. He's from Italy. And he's still like, you can tell, he's still learning the game. So there's a lot of room to grow there. So I like him. There's another guy, Derek Parrish from Houston, team captain, played football, played fullback, defensive end, and linebacker. Yeah, he was a finalist for the Horning Award.
He's actually listed on the roster as a fullback ch defensive end. Like they don't even know what he's going to play at the Shrine
And he'll
Bowl.
play some linebacker too. I put him with the defensive ends because that's mostly what he played last year. But linebackers, this is kind of where the guys are on the other side. Robert Beal from Georgia is a really interesting one to me because they've targeted in the past guys who were high-ranked high school recruits who maybe didn't pan out. Beal's supposed to be this elite pass rusher, goes to Georgia as a 5-star, and just never really got beyond a rotational role. He's supposed to go on day 3.
It's a tough defense to crack.
Right. Could be an interesting guy to invest in. And then we talk about the Horning Award. How about the Cliff Harris Award? The best non-D1 player in the country. The last 2 winners being Kyle Duggar and then Sam Roberts.
How many second-round picks do they have?
This guy's supposed to go later on day 3. I
know he's supposed to go later on day 3, Alex.
Caleb Murphy from Ferris State. He had 25.5 sacks in 15 games last year.
So Sam Roberts participated in the Shrine Bowl last year, won the Cliff Harris Award, and then was drafted by the Patriots in the 6th round. So there's a lot of pedigree there.
I'm sorry, Evan. I know you're big school and all that. I don't care what level you're playing at. 25.5 sacks in 15 games is impressive.
That's a lot.
I'm not saying take the kid in the 1st round, but that stands out. All right. Need a big corner?
Yes.
Here's the 2 I have. On the West team from Louisiana Tech, Miles Brooks.
Yeah, he's on my list.
6'2", 198.
Feisty.
Very productive. Now, he played 2 Power 5 games last year. He was excellent against Missouri and then kind of got eaten up by Clemson. So against some of this Power 5 talent, it's going to be very interesting to see how he does. He's a projected day 3 pick. And a guy who's kind of come up out of nowhere, Lance Boykin from Coastal.
Yeah.
6'3", 200, like great athlete. I think he's a track guy. He's projected to go on draft right now, but it's that Tyreek Woolen thing where if he's that big and that athletic, just get him in the building and figure it out.
So what are your thoughts on Mekhi Gardner? Because he's going to be there as well.
You got to give me the school.
LSU. So
yeah,
he's another one of those guys that had a big pedigree coming in, right? And went to a big school, all those types of things. I don't think he's been quite as productive as they were hoping he was going to be in LSU, but at least what he's listed at, he's listed as 6'1", 6'2", another big guy. I'm interested to see how he looks. I'm interested to see how a lot of these guys look because I think the corners specifically. at these showcases, the one thing that you're guaranteed that you're going to get a bunch of is one-on-ones.
Yeah.
Right? Like, you're going to see all these types of guys,
Give me your actual thoughts on THT. I don't know if you've watched him.
I just don't. I have watched him a little bit. I don't dislike the player. And say his full name for people that...
Travius Hodges Tomlinson.
Yeah.
He's LT's nephew, for what it's worth, LaDainian Tomlinson.
He's just so redundant to Marcus Jones.
Yeah.
They're the same guy.
Technically he's outstanding, right?
Yeah.
So this is the thing. He might be as skilled as any corner in this draft, but he's 5'8".
Right.
And he played exclusively on the boundary at TCU.
You're just describing Marcus Jones.
But are they going to look at what they did with John Jones and what they did with Marcus Jones this year and say, we're going to get a guy for first-round talent in the third or fourth round, and we know we can make these shorter corners work on the boundary because we've done it? That's what I wonder. And they're not working with him. He's on the East team, so that's interesting.
I think it's possible. What I worry about with it is, so look, I think that there's, and this is an off-season topic that we can talk about when we have more time, but the short version, there are a lot of defenses that are playing this weekend, in championship weekend, that do not have a stud number one corner in their
Right.
Cincinnati for 2 years has made it this far in back-to-back years with Eli Apple probably being their best corner because they mix and match so well on the back end, right? They run a lot of zone, they run a lot of exotics, they spin the dial, they blitz, they don't blitz, like they do a bunch of different things, and it allows them to get away with matchups being maybe not exactly in their favor. So the Patriots can do that, and they certainly have the coaching chops to do that. I just don't know if there's a blueprint for a Bill Belichick defense that doesn't have Darrelle Revis, Stephon Gilmore, Aqib Talib, Ty Law. Like, he doesn't have that guy. And so I think it's possible, and maybe they look at it and they say, we could draft, there's a couple of Cam Smith, Witherspoon, right? Like Darren Witherspoon, I think Mel Kiper had them taking in the first round in his mock today. Like, there's a bunch of guys like that in this draft that would be in range at 14 that would make sense for the Patriots in the first round. But it goes back to value, right? And if they could get some of these guys that we're going to see this weekend on a value third or fourth round type of pick like they did with the Joneses, like maybe that's where the corner is now. Like maybe that's where the market has gone. So it's possible. I just think he's super redundant to Marcus Jones.
But they haven't been afraid of making redundant picks in the past.
No, I'm not saying they wouldn't do it. I just think that if they're going to draft, and then we have to wrap. If they're going to draft a corner in that range, there's so many 6'1", 6'2", bigger boundary corners
I don't disagree,
in this draft that you just go and get one of those guys so you have them. So when you play
the Bengals and you have to cover T. Higgins,
you have somebody to cover him. Like I always like to compare, especially with the Patriots. I always like to compare the cornerback room to like a basketball team, right?
Yeah.
And you have to have 1 through 5. You have to have guys that can cover. A point guard's going to take the point guard, the center's going to take the center, and you have to be able to match up body types. Now there are guys that can do it all, right? Like they're so athletic or they're such good defenders. Marcus Smart, he can cover kind of 1 through 5 to a degree. But at the end of the day, I think that you need to have a Rob Williams and you need to have a Marcus Smart. Like you can't just have Marcus Smarts.
So I'll give you real quick. I'll give you this guy. Trey Dean is listed as a safety, but he can play box safety corner, 6'3", 207. They're going to be working with him, versatile defensive back. You talk about the needs in the Belichick defense, the deep safety. The best deep safety in this game, I think, is on the East team. That's Jervarius Owens from, guess where? Houston.
A lot of Houston guys. All right.
They like that program. It's going to be Power 5 soon.
So Alex and I will be doing podcasts every single day from Las Vegas at the Shrine Bowl. I don't believe they're going to be live. I think we're going to do them as true podcasts. So you can go on Patriots.com or Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google or wherever you get your podcasts and check them out there.
But so, unfortunately, they won't be on YouTube. If you're somebody who watches on YouTube and you want to find them, you got to go to Patriots.com.
You got to go to the audio feeds, correct.
Yeah.
So we will be starting on Saturday doing podcasts from the Shrine Bowl all week long during practice at the Shrine Bowl, and we're really looking forward to it. So we'll talk to you guys on Saturday from Las Vegas. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll talk to you then.
Thank you for downloading this podcast. Subscribe on Apple, Google Play, and everywhere else you listen. Like the show? Please rate and review us. Listener comments and ratings help keep us high in the podcast rankings so new listeners can find us. Be sure to check patriots.com for more news and more podcasts.